My name is Chennai. I'm Zimbabwean, not a lawyer, not a techie, but a sociologist. I feel like it's important to always state that. And I'm also a Mozilla Tech Policy Fellow, as well as a research manager for gender and digital rights at the Web Foundation.
And I'm Frederica. I'm also a Mozilla Tech Policy Fellow, and for the past 3 to 4 years, my job has been to hold tech companies and governments to account by filing lawsuits and doing investigations around data exploitation. So this is where I'm coming from. All right, I'm going to start with some general comments about AI. It's very difficult to have policy discussions about AI because there's so much hype around the word, and the word is used to mean so many different contradictory things. Just to put one number out there, a study from last year showed that 40% of European AI companies don't actually use AI. What's also important to realize is that of the many companies or many startups that use AI, they actually use ready-made models that have or pre-trained models that are offered by some of the world's largest tech companies. And then they modify these. So it's really important to recognize the context in which AI is happening. And the context is a tech world that's dominated by a handful of tech companies, a business model that is still primarily the exploitation of people's data, and third, governments around the world who just love surveillance and policing technology. So that's the context. The other misconception I want to get out of the way is that we sometimes think about AI as something extremely futuristic, as something that is not there yet. But AI is everybody who uses the internet uses AI systems. So just to throw in some of these systems, those are search engines rely on AI, recommender systems used by platforms like YouTube rely on AI, Instagram, Spotify, voice recognition, and then we get into things like voice recognition, face recognition system. All of these use AI. So the definition we'd like to propose is AI is, or the term AI refers to a wide range of applications, techniques at different levels of autonomy, complexity, and abstraction, if that makes sense. One tiny thing before I hand over to Chennai. There's a lot of hype around AI for good, blockchain for good. And I think it's when we think about tech policy, it's always good to come back to a very famous quote, which is, technology is neither good nor bad, but never neutral. This means that, yes, of course, AI can lead to positive things, but yes, of course, AI can also amplify existing inequalities and injustices, and the technology comes with tremendous risks. Just to throw in some of these risks, one of these are when it comes to data privacy, freedom of expression and information, the right to effective remedy, the right to a fair trial, and the freedom from discrimination. So basically, if you want to regulate AI and you don't have the basics, if you don't have a data protection law, those are basically, there are going to be very, very many gaps. So I'm handing over to you.
Thanks so much, Frederica. So we've realized that our favorite tag team is to do the global presentation, and then I zone in on the Africa conversation. So thinking about AI within the context of Africa, it's something that I just started reading on and engaging with, and also because of the effect of the search engines when you search for particular information and does not reflect your context. The AI landscape in Africa seems to be more of a startup space that's trying to use this technology to address the problems that we have, solutions for Africans by Africans, as is the context with technology. However, we do risk running into replacing the for good with having tech for good, AI for good, without reflecting on the inequalities that we exist in within our societies. So particularly looking at the policy landscape within Africa when it comes to artificial intelligence, so far, 2018, Tunisia started a national AI policy strategy. Kenya, I stand to be corrected. I think I actually raised this on Friday, so I'm still posing it as a fact and waiting for someone to correct me, that there actually is an AI task force within Kenya. So I'm correct, no misinformation from me. And then specifically looking at South Africa, where my context is, there actually is what I would call the excitement around the fourth industrial revolution. And I say excitement because I'm very cautious about revolutions in who they bring and who they leave out. In particular for women, we're always at the last pace. So with South Africa, they set up the Fourth Industrial Revolution Commission, and they specifically focus on the economic opportunities and the employment opportunities, because this is a context where unemployment levels are quite high, and when you introduce technology, the fear is that some people will lose their jobs. Great. So for me, when I think about artificial intelligence, and especially when I come into these contexts with such amazing people, I'm always wondering what is the effect of the regulation and policies that we put forward for people like our parents who don't have access to these spaces, for people like younger children who we're buying cell phones for and will actually be engaging with artificial intelligence. How are we thinking about the policies and regulations from a data justice perspective? And so I always frame this from trying to understand the harms of bias that emerge from AI, the discrimination, the mass surveillance, and, as Frederica has already pointed out, issues around data privacy. So I was told that I had 3 minutes from 10. So I guess my point that I hope we discuss in this group and we take further on is, as we think about AI, regulation, and policies, we really have to think about it in terms of our African context. What exactly does an AI regulation from Africa look like? Who is being represented in the room? What are we focusing on? And how do we ensure that we do have an enabling environment that does allow for tech policies by Africans for Africans? Thank you.